Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. Frauds or fearsome? Fraud. I'm the fraud. You're fearsome. That's what we're doing on this show. We're just going to talk about that for 40 minutes and be like, does everybody agree? Does anybody think that Bill's a fraud and Doug is fearsome? And maybe go about it that way. Actually, we're going to do frauds or fearsome with 13 different non-North teams. Because you know spring football is here, Landis, not just for college football players, but like I've got to get back in shape, right? This is an opportunity for me as well. And I was away for a little bit and I got to get my swords out, man.
You've been doing some dry hacks out in the backyard, just like hitting a tree or something?
You know how like everyone does the videos or the shots of like when I got to college, I was 189 pounds and now I've been in the weight room and I'm 211. I'm going to do one of those. So it's going to be like after a couple of weeks of dry hacks. What did you call it? Dry hacks out in the yard?
Yeah.
And up there dry hacking. I am dry hacking like a mofo. I don't know what to tell you, but I hope everybody can tell. So, but we have to rip the South. That's when the swords come out, and we've been talking too much Northern ball. So we're going to do that middle of the show. 13 Southern teams. We threw USC in there because we're talking about Bambi, LSU, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Miami, Clemson, Georgia, everybody in the South. Do we think they're for real or do we think they're frauds? You and I are just going to check in on every team. We're going to do that. The end of the show, we're going to do our Final Four. Most important person in Northern college football for 2025. We've had our four regions. We have the Final Four. Kansas quarterback Jalon Daniels, Minnesota safety Koi Perich, Penn State head coach James Franklin, Ohio State receiver Jeremiah Smith. One of them will be named the most important person in Northern college football in 2025. Very exciting for them and for us. But first, news. We're going to start with a little bit of news. We're going to talk about some stuff that's happening.
Let's do it.
World of Northern college football. What's going on? Let's start with the actual freshest thing, producer Mike, which just happened this morning or just was announced this morning at Indiana. Unfortunate news. This is the kind of stuff you don't want to be talking about during spring football. But Indiana coach Curt Cignetti announced this morning, Tuesday morning, that Michigan transfer receiver Tyler Morris, who was probably going to start in the slot for Michigan, suffered a non-contact knee injury and is out for the year. He was Michigan's leading receiver last year. Colston Loveland, the tight end, led Michigan in all the pass-catching stats. But among receivers, 37 targets, 23 catches. He led Michigan with 248 receiving yards among receivers. We talked about this. It was kind of like an Indiana-Michigan trade. Tyler Morris, a smaller receiver, transfers Michigan to Indiana. Donovan McCulley, a 6'5 receiver, transfers Indiana to Michigan. And now Tyler Morris is hurt. So this stinks, Landis. But Elijah Surratt, Omar Cooper Jr. still at Indiana as their top two receivers. They might go get somebody in the portal. When you know how to work the portal, which Indiana and Curt Cignetti have shown, and basically everybody who's competing has shown that by now, this is one of those things where, man, having a practice session and then a portal window right now, you can solve problems in a way that in the previous history of college football, you couldn't solve problems like this.
Yeah, and they're gonna have to figure out an answer for this. I think Indiana, like Elijah Surratt, is one of the best returning receivers in the country, and that's great. And like Omar Cooper was good last year. Mekhi Jackson, the transfer, is good, but they're all like outside guys. If we look at their snap counts, predominantly outside. Tyler Morris is going to start in the slot most likely, so you might have to go find that skill set now, specifically in the transfer portal. If you're Indiana, who might that be? Don't know. I guess we'll have to see how that dust settles after spring practices. I believe the transfer portal window for the spring opens. Is it next weekend? So like there's a batch of spring games next weekend, and I think the portal opens directly after that, right? So, but I think we also all know kind of how the game is played. Teams have an idea of who might be going into the portal already, even if there's not an apparent fix in there for Indiana. But I think I'd be pretty surprised if Indiana didn't go try to find a replacement specifically in the slot now that they're out without Tyler Morris for the year.
Listen, we know nobody makes contact they're not allowed to make with anybody. But if you are a backup slot receiver, I mean, nobody does. Right, Bill, we acknowledge that. Everybody does plays by the rules. Yeah. Can I just do this again? Oh my gosh. Spring is back. But if you are a backup slot receiver, in the Power 4 conferences, Kurt Cignetti's giving you a little bit of this. Hey, you're allowed to wink at a guy, right? Can you wink at a guy? Hey,
you can wink at a guy.
How's that backup slot receiver thing going for you? We got a need over here. What about that? Am I doing it with the correct eye? Yeah, I can wink. Can you wink?
Yeah, I'm too much of my face moves when I try to do it. Yeah.
Okay. We'll have a winking contest.
Yeah.
That'll be later. On Watch It, we can have a winking contest. We'll be back tomorrow, by the way, Tuesday and Wednesday this week. We continue to move stuff around to serve everybody the best that we can. Deion Sanders got paid. We have not talked about this. This is for the end of last week, but we have not talked about this since it happened. Deion Sanders got a new contract from Colorado. It's a 5-year deal. So like he had 3 years left on his current deal. So this is adding 2 years, but it's through 2029. He made $5.7 million last year. He's now making more than $10 million a year. So he's making $10 million this year and next. Then he's making $11 million for 2 years. And he's making $12 million in 2029. He becomes one of the 10 highest paid coaches in college football. And his buyout also went up. So it's like, it's sticky. Like he's taken the extension. He's almost doubling his salary. His buyout, for instance, in 2026, if he wanted to like leave next year, right? It was $5 million. Now it's 10. So it's like, that's a commitment. And now he still has a buyout on the back end. They aren't guarantees, but it would cost him $6 million to leave in 2027, $4 million in 2028. A schooler or whatever would come pay him for that. But anyway, he's sticking for a little bit.
Yeah.
Top 10. He's making the same as Bill Belichick now. And listen, it's Kirby Smart, it's Ryan Day, it's Dabo Swinney, it's Steve Sarkisian, it's Dan Lanning. Those guys at the top of the sport making the biggest winners right now. I want to ask you 2 questions about this. First is, what about the idea of paying a coach for driving interest, elevating your program, getting fans excited, which makes your program more money, but maybe it's not totally about like winning a national championship? That it's not that it's because paying to drive interest is not the same as paying for winning. Winning does drive interest, but there also are ways to drive interest that are not winning at the highest level. And I feel like this is an interesting contract in that way, because I think Deion Sanders is worth is any college football coach worth any of this? But if it's what it's costing to pay you, but what the college and the athletic department are getting out of it, I think he's worth it as much as anybody in the sport because of the interest he's driving at Colorado, which turns into this for Colorado. Right. So he's worth it.
Has a coach over the last 5 years, which obviously doesn't include all of Deion's time in Colorado, or only because the 2 years Deion's been in Colorado, done a better job of like flipping the perception and the interest of our program than Deion Sanders? Because I don't know that it's happened, and I do think if you can recalibrate your brain to not only think about national championships, then I think he's very, very much worth it. And also, by the way, I think he can win the Big 12 at Colorado. So like if he can win the Big 12 at Colorado and then get into the playoff, who's to say that like he won't ever win a national championship there? It's not like Colorado's never won a national championship before. So like that's not what this is about necessarily, but it's not like that is some far off fantasy idea that is totally unattainable for a program that is in a conference that I think allows that kind of upward mobility year after year. So that's there to chase. But in the meantime, Deion has done wonders for Colorado and its brand. He deserves it.
1-11 the year before he got there, 4-8 in year 1, 9-4 in year 2. So this is not to say I'm not saying he can't win at the highest level. I'm saying that even if he doesn't win at the highest level, he's worth this money.
I agree. Yeah.
Number 2, would you rather pay? Please keep in mind that I have both of my swords out today. Who would you rather
I'll answer
pay
the question before you. Deion Sanders. It's Deion Sanders.
Okay, you know what's up. We're not.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick.
Pay
him
go kick rocks.
My God. Honestly, Bill Belichick, that contract should be 6.5 for Bill Belichick, 3.5 million for the girlfriend. right? I mean, like if we're talking about interest, driving interest, it's like she's wearing a mermaid costume. You gotta like she does like that Instagram feed's not filling itself.
She's also like an integral part of the program. Apparently, weren't there some things about like emails? He was telling like his staffers to copy his girlfriend on his messages to him.
I can't wait. I can't wait. We're going to North Carolina, Syracuse. I can't wait. Oh my God. Okay. Deion's worth the money. Speaking of Syracuse and Colorado knew. This also happened last week. We haven't had a show since it happened. No spring game for Colorado and Syracuse. The committee that decides this stuff, oversight committee, said no. Main three things they said, but why they said no, like the late timing of it. They're asking to do it like right now, and they're like, it's too late. And it would give them an edge, they thought, a recruiting edge, that it'd be too cool. It's one of those things when your idea is, the technical definition is that's too cool. You aren't allowed to do it. You know you're onto something. And then they also say like, well, guys would miss class, which, God bless you, NCAA. Look at them looking out for the kids. Might miss class.
What about when Syracuse has to go play Stanford in a conference game?
What? And how much more interest would there be in a Syracuse Colorado spring game than a Syracuse Stanford? Actually, Syracuse Stanford last year was a banger. It went down to the final second. But anyway, it's like, hey, we really need. Guys. Hey, committee, we really need like a third thing to say no. Miss class time. Great way to pull one out of the archives. Hey, who's on? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, do you not find it at least somewhat encouraging that the first reason they gave for saying no was the poor timing? Because I actually agree with that. It's like, you could have thrown this out there 4 months ago. Maybe we could have got something done. But like the saying no because of the timing initially, in my mind, is not dismissing the idea like offhand that maybe this has some traction that can pick back up as we go in the next year.
And they said they're going to table it and discuss the bigger picture of it later. I think this is going to happen, like based on that. You're right. Mike Gundy's talking about like they should do Bedlam as a spring game with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Joe McGuire, the Texas Tech coach, is like talking about like a Texas festival with Texas A&M and Texas and all these things. We've talked about it.
That's my idea. I want that in Ohio. You stole my idea.
Ohio Festival of Football. Joey McGuire watches this show. 100% Joey McGuire watches this show. You're a taste.
You should wait till later when we call his team a fraud.
Oh, you are a tastemaker of Texas football, are you not? You're a tastemaker.
I'm number 2 behind Shahan J. Haraja. Yeah,
that is actually correct. Do you know who is one of the people on this oversight committee that made this decision?
I don't know. Oliver Luck.
Brett Bielema.
Oh, really? Nice.
Brett Bielema, who's like, that's too cool because I want to do it, which I imagine. Yeah. But we can't get this figured out in the next 9 days. So let's do it a year from now. But like Ryan Day and some other people, I think Matt Rule, I think other people brought this up. Like they are still college players. They are not full experts in the sport of football. And so when NFL teams do this, these are millionaires who are out to protect themselves and have collectively bargained what they are and are not allowed to do, and understand that like, well, my paycheck's riding on this, but also like, I'm not going to break somebody else's leg over this because like the man, doesn't deserve that. Do you have any concerns about that? Is that a real concern for some college coaches of like, we're just going to throw college players together and all of a sudden some backup defensive end who's all excited for this and is just trying to really make a name for himself does a spin move and tries to dive at the quarterback and like blows out Jordan Seaton, the Colorado left tackle, blows out his knee because he's like going too crazy in a spring practice? Like, is that a legit concern, or how can you assuage that for the coaches? And I think Ryan Day is one who are concerned about that.
I don't know why it would be such a tremendous concern compared to what you sort of assume when you just practice regularly in the spring, right? Like, could you be a little too amped up? Sure. Like we see that in the NFL, there's fights all the time in these joint practices. So I guess that could happen, but like, pushing and shoving and fighting is actually wouldn't be my concern. It's more about like, Ryan Day was talking about like, do you know not to take a receiver's legs out from underneath him when he's jumping up to catch a pass? Do you know,
right?
Like, is your version of thud tempo the same version, their version of thud tempo kind of thing? Like, he called it the rules of engagement, and being on the same page with the other team. Which I do agree with him is a fair concern, but it also feels to me like something that could get ironed out with a meeting or two before you embark on your joint practice or your scrimmage or whatever that might be. But you actually just mentioned something that I hadn't considered, and I don't like. Maybe I should know more about the structure of like NIL deals and the structure of the rev share that's coming up. And if any of it is tied to like number of games, and now you are throwing in another game like situation against another program, is some player be like, yeah, I'll do that, but you're going to pay me X amount more because I'm now going to play a spring scrimmage against Virginia Tech that I wasn't prepared for when we initially signed my deal.
Collectively bargain it. Collectively bargain it. I don't know if anyone's ever sang a song about collective bargaining before. They got to figure this out, because like these are all like reasonable questions, and the way that you answer those is everybody sits around together and says, "Well, if you do this, then you get to do this, and if we'll do this, but then we do," and everybody works it out. All right, but I do think the way this is unfolded, do you predict that next season we will have teams going against each other in some format? And the committee did say what Colorado and Syracuse had asked for was like one practice in pads, one practice not in pads, and an 11-on-11 scrimmage, which would be like a spring game. Do you think we'll have it next year? Yes or no?
I would say maybe not next year, but I think it will happen. I would say maybe 2 years down the road.
Okay. I'll say it's next year.
Yeah.
I think they figured
I hope
it out
you're
next
right.
year.
I hope you're right.
You brought this up. This is a Wisconsin recruiting thing, Wisconsin and Minnesota, that I think is interesting, but because I think there's a point to this. And here's the thing I want to ask first. I don't like identity discussions as it relates to like, oh, we got to figure out our identity. What's your identity? It's like, your identity is like try to win. Your identity is like run the ball and then throw the ball and then tackle and play pass defense and be sound, but also make big plays. Like, we know what everyone's identity is. Right. So I think we can go overboard with identity discussions. But I felt like it came up with this. You mentioned this. It's the number one recruit in the class of 2026 in the state of Wisconsin who has committed to Minnesota. And he gave an interview, I think, to The Athletic, right, where he basically was saying like, Wisconsin's not Wisconsin at the moment. So I'm committing to Minnesota. And I think we can overdo it with like, what's your identity? What's your identity in a game? But if recruits don't know who you are, that to me is where identity matters. And it feels like this was a little bit, it's not new, but for the biggest recruit in the state of Wisconsin to express this, Landis, felt like kind of a big deal to me.
Yeah. So it was Gavin Meyer, who's an offensive lineman from Janesville, Wisconsin in the class of 2026. Can I read the quote? So people will know what he said. So this is the lead. Meyer's decision had to do with what he believes Wisconsin isn't right now. And then here's the quote. I don't like talking bad about other schools, but I also have to keep in mind that this isn't the same Wisconsin they used to be. Like, this isn't the Barry Alvarez Wisconsin. I don't like throwing shade at anybody, which is a great thing to say as you're throwing shade at somebody, because Wisconsin is still a great program. But Minnesota, they've proven to be good. The past 3 out of 4 years, they've beaten Wisconsin. Wisconsin, one more losing season, and it's kind of uncertain. I get Coach Fickell is signed, but anything can happen.
I mean, imagine a recruit saying this, a Texas recruit saying this as he's going to Oklahoma, right? Or a recruit from Ohio saying this about Ohio State as he's going to Michigan. Or a recruit in the state of South Carolina saying this about Clemson as he's going to South Carolina, right? Like this is, I don't know that it's not new, but I think, for instance, you've been on this much like more than me, but if I'm like, that swung on Phil Longo, what are you going to do? Luke Fickles, he's been a winner. They'll be fine. Like, this is kind of proof. I think like that you've been a little more staunch on this, that like this can't go on forever. Because if it's trickled down to the best high school player in Wisconsin, then it's kind of like a 5-alarm fire, is it not?
Yeah, you know what it reminds me of a little bit? Do you remember the end of Thad Matta's tenure at Ohio State basketball coach when he couldn't keep his recruiting class together? And then one of the players whose name is escaping me at the moment,
Darius Baisley.
Yeah, thank you. Decommitted from Ohio State because he basically said he knows he's an NBA player and Ohio State's not going to get him there. And that was sort of the end of Thad Matta.
It was literally the end of Thad Matta. It was why he got fired at a weird time in the middle of the summer. It was the straw that broke the camel's back for the AD that made the decision.
Yes, which is I don't think I don't know that a 3-star offensive tackle saying this is going to do that for Luke Fickell necessarily. It's not what I'm saying, but it's just another thing to pile on. I think the perception of your program matters, especially for in-state recruits, and the lifeblood of Wisconsin football. I don't think is going to be Wisconsin recruits because there's just not enough in-state talent. I think to support that. But this is also an offensive lineman. It's not like the state of Wisconsin had a receiver who's really good who said you know what, I want to go somewhere where the offense throws the ball a little more consistently. This is this was what Wisconsin does. This is a homegrown offensive lineman saying this about your program as he goes to Minnesota. And Wisconsin could flip them, right? There's a long way till signing day for the class of 2026. So I do think we can tend to make a little too much about what recruits say this early in their process, even as they're committing somewhere else. But I can't imagine that Gavin Meyer is alone in feeling the way that he feels about Wisconsin football, right? And maybe that's the most damning thing in all of it, is that Wisconsin needs to get back to winning, whatever that looks like, so that prospects view them as the old Wisconsin program that was a perennial winner, that was contending in the Big Ten, and in this case, I think contending for playoff spots.
I mean, this is what happened in Southern California for a while with USC, that players from Southern California were I can't go to USC because USC can't get me where I want to go. So if now that's basically what's being said here. It doesn't mean that at all costs Wisconsin has to flip this guy. It means at all costs, so Wisconsin needs to eliminate this perception in the state of Wisconsin and everywhere else in the Midwest where they're trying to get players.
Yeah.
So if you're the AD reads a quote like this and it matters, I just 1,000%. And Luke Fickell reads a quote like this and it matters. No offense to you, nobody cares what you think. So you've been saying it, but even though you are a tastemaker in the state of Texas, Luke Fickell's not going to be well, Landis is out, I guess we're done here. Yeah. But when the number one recruit in your state says it,
sure,
you notice. So it is a very interesting thing to think about. I take that back. Now I feel bad that I said that.
It's okay. It's okay. I think if this were 17 years ago and I was still in my athletic prime, maybe it would matter more what I said. Yeah. But I don't. But I'm not.
The Final Four is dead to me. Just wanted to say that very quickly. And again, I like it when things pop up that nobody else would think about it this way, because it's not an all SEC Final Four, which is people maybe thought it was going to be that. And if Alabama had beaten Duke and if Tennessee had beaten Houston, oh my God, we wouldn't be hearing the end of it. Oh, thank you to Houston and Duke for making sure this was not an all. Oh my God. What would we do? Sports would be over. I would be wearing this for real to our SEC overlords if it was an all SEC Final Four. So it's 2 SEC teams, an ACC team, and a Big 12 team. So nobody's freaking out. But what it is, Landis, is an all South Final Four. Ain't no Northern team to be found.
When's the last time that happened?
I looked it up. How about that? You want to guess? Go ahead and guess.
1992.
2006. 2006. It was the first Final Four that I covered. Florida, UCLA, LSU, George Mason, which is in Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
But before that, the last one before that was 1995. UCLA, Arkansas, North Carolina, Oklahoma State. But so you think about since 06, Ohio State and Georgetown are in there. Kansas is in there. Michigan State, Connecticut, Villanova, Butler, Michigan State, West Virginia, Connecticut, Butler, Kansas, Ohio State, Michigan, Syracuse, right? Wisconsin in there. UConn, 2-time national champion, just all over the place. So in the last 20 years, again, we're not a basketball show. The last 20 years, 10 NCAA men's basketball champions from the South, 9 from the North, 1 border school, Louisville. So we have five. UConn's won 5 national titles in the last 20 years, by the way.
Three different coaches. It's pretty crazy.
You start looking at stuff, and it's like,
we don't talk about it enough.
it's like, wait, UConn is Nick Saban, but it's 3 different guys?
No, they're LSU.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable. UConn has 5. Kansas has 2. Villanova has 2. Those are actually the 9. There's only 3 Northern teams. So anyway, I don't care. I think I might not watch. Should I not watch? I don't. It's all 1 seeds for the first time since 2008. I also covered that Final Four, which was stacked. Kevin Love, Russell Westbrook, Tyler Hansbrough, Brandon Rush. I can remember that one. Derrick Rose from Memphis. Awesome. I don't know that this is that. Also, I'm not sure I care. Should I care? You have 30 seconds to make a compelling case for why people of the North should watch this Final Four.
I don't have a compelling case for why they should watch it. So if you don't care, you don't have to care. I want Houston to win. I like Kelvin Sampson, so I'll be watching for that.
Oh, former Northern coach.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So we just traded basketball for football. We good with that trade? We took football.
We'll take that trade. Yeah.
They could have men's basketball.
We still got hockey.
Yeah. Last thing, I thought about this, and I couldn't come up with anything. Should we have done an April Fool's prank? Where are you on media doing April Fool's things?
I hate it. I'm not a big April Fool's guy, especially now. Our internet literacy is at an all-time low. We don't need that. we don't need media companies doing April Fool's jokes at the moment.
There is no faster way to set your career on fire than to say or write a thing that you know not to be true. And then to do that and then just be like, but it was the funny joke day is I'm not playing that game anymore. We are 15 years past playing that game. So you were not born, but I very vividly remember the Sid Finch Sports Illustrated April Fool's cover story. I think it was in 1985 or 6. And just absolutely going to school and having rip-roaring debates with my friends about whether it was real or not. And I'll be honest, this far removed from it, 35 years removed from it, I can't remember which side of that I was on. But I might have been on the side of, I think the guy that throws 168 miles per hour is real. I got to admit that. If you had to guess whether I was on the side of, was the Sports Illustrated April Fool's Day prank real or not, where they created a guy from the mountains of Tibet who wore one boot and one naked foot while he pitched and could throw 168 miles per hour. Did 7th grade Doug Lesmerises find that to be plausible or implausible?
Plausible.
I would bet dollars to donuts I thought it was true. And I'm sure I was walking down the hallway to algebra being like, yeah, a guy could throw 168. So anyway, I'm not doing that. We're not putting that out in the world. The only one that I saw so far today is, did you see this? Arizona State said they're going to a maroon turf field. And Boise State retweeted it and said cease and desist, which I thought was kind of funny. But actually, this is one of those things. They put a picture of it. You know what looks baller? Arizona State's maroon field. It's great April Fool's joke. Also, install that field tomorrow.
Yeah, you accidentally stumbled upon a good idea. I've seen that. That's relatively harmless, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's always there was something floating around the other day of this fake offensive line prospect. It was he's 6'8", he's 490 pounds, and he runs a whatever sub 540, and he's got Ohio State and Notre Dame in his top 5 or something like that. It's that's clearly fake. But maybe there's a good bit of fun to be had in there on an April Fool's Day if you want to. I don't know, but it's not for me.
But the whole point is, as you said, both with the world and the sports world, and specifically college football, there's almost nothing that you can make up that doesn't sound at least plausible. So then it's okay, now you're just into career-ending mode. So we're not doing it. So anyway,
pass.
A, I couldn't think of one. B, we're not doing it. C, the big house tomorrow, Mace Field blue trim, I'm in. Tomorrow, orange field at Syracuse, I'm in.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, crimson Field at Indiana, in. Tomorrow, Barry Odom announces they're going gold and black for the Purdue field this year, black with gold trim, 1,000% in. So, like, why
ever makes a big deal out of Michigan State's field being its team colors?
Yeah, well, but you could like change, like tweak the green, still green, but tweak it. Right. But because it's like one of those things. It's like, well, grass is green. Okay, grass is green. Why is fake grass green?
That's true. Use some imagination.
Yeah. Why does fake grass have to be green? So, like, put it in your school colors. So I'm like 1,000. I could not be more behind this. So I might have actually like named some schools who have grass fields. So like, I'm not saying dye your grass. I'm saying if you got turf, use your school colors. All right. Fearsome or fraud across the South. Next on KOTN. Doug Lesmerises back with Bill Landis. Producer Mike, by the way, points out, Bill, that Darius Baisley had 14 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists in the Chinese Basketball League yesterday.
Nice.
The guy who ended the run for Thad Matta, because that's how it goes sometimes.
Did Thad Matta catch a dub in the college basketball crown yesterday, by the way?
The crown's underway in Vegas.
Started
yesterday. Is it underway for real?
Started yesterday, yeah.
Congratulations to all the teams involved there. They're getting NIL money, right?
I think so. Butler did win.
Oh, okay.
Butler will play Boise State in an all-North battle.
Oh,
tomorrow.
All right. We'll do an extra show for that.
Okay.
We'll do all the Northern breakdowns. While the South is in the Final Four, we'll do the Northern breakdowns of the Crown Invitational in Vegas.
Okay.
45 minutes on tomorrow's show, Butler versus Boise. All right, let's do Fearsome or Fraud, like 3 minutes each. Like, honestly, like, what do you think? What's the deal with these schools? Texas is where we start. Texas is the number 2 favorite in the betting lines for national championship odds. Number 1 among Southern teams. They're plus 650 to win the national championship. Their over-under win total is 9.5. The Texas Longhorns, this is from the perspective of Northern fans, Northern teams, like getting down the line. Hey, is this a team that anybody in the North should be worried about and how they could affect the playoff picture, challenging for a national championship, beating Northern teams along the way? Texas, fearsome or fraud?
Well, I think Texas checks all those boxes you just laid out. I think they are a legitimate national title contender. And also they open the season with Ohio State. So like, will that game be of significant consequence for either team in their push for a playoff spot? Maybe not, but it could be. I think like all the pieces are there for Texas to be feared / respected, however you want to couch it, especially on defense. Like they have a lot of production back on defense for a team that reached the national semifinals last year. It's interesting to me, like they haven't. If you look at their returning production, there's actually a good amount of it on defense and practically none on offense. But then when you look at what Texas did in the transfer portal, it was like all defense and a punter. They didn't add a single offensive player in the transfer portal. Maybe they'll do it after spring practice. But so thus far they haven't done it. So like it starts with Arch Manning. I think everyone thinks Arch is ready, right? They have Ryan Wingo at receiver, was like a 5-star guy coming out of high school. Probably didn't pop as much as people thought he would as a true freshman, but I think still has a lot of upside. Colin Simmons is back at defensive end. Trey Moore's back at defensive end. Anthony Hill's back at linebacker. Michael Taffy's back at safety. Malik Muhammad is back at cornerback. So there's just like a lot there for a team that's trying to run it back and get back to the national semifinals. So I have them very much in the fearsome category as we have this discussion.
Yeah, I'll go fearsome too. I think you'd be a little silly to try to talk yourself into anything else with Texas. I mean, they're turning over a lot offensively, right? So like that's
yeah, for sure.
That's real.
5 of their top 8 guys and targets are gone. which is like not nothing. But
right. So, I mean, not to be dismissive of it, but of those things, but with Arch and everything else, I think they're a fearsome, no doubt about it. Can I do this, by the way, very quickly? Do you remember the 10.5 group that we did when we did over-unders? And we did actually a separate segment on our 4 teams in the North that their over-under win total was 10.5. That was Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Notre Dame. Do you know how many Southern teams have a over-under win total of 10.5?
0
for the 12-day regular season. 0.
Yeah, there's like a large group of 9.5 in the SEC, but no 10.5.
I got 5 9.5 in the South, and I have no 9.5 in the North. So it's the top 4 over-under win totals are all Northern teams. Then it's 5 Southern teams, and then I have 9 teams at 8.5 for their win total, 6 in the South and 3 in the North. So anyway, like I don't know how much of a function of that is like the perceived depth of the SEC. It's like, well, I don't know. When I can get through this league, I don't know. Or maybe just that Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, and Notre Dame are the 4 best teams in the country. Because what I will not do is automatically ascribe that to, well, down here, dogma, nobody can, right? It might be that those 4 Northern teams are perceived and correctly perceived as the 4 best teams in the country.
Sure. Yeah. It's definitely more clear cut, I think, for those 4 Northern teams that are in the 10.5 club. Although I guess I wouldn't say that necessarily about Oregon. But they're part of that club anyway.
Yeah. I mean, Oregon has an easier schedule than Georgia, right? I mean, like we also can be realistic about that. But anyway, nobody knows. Georgia, they brought in the Branch brothers from USC. Zachariah and Zion. So they're counting on Zachariah Branch and Noah Thomas in the receiver room to do something. Because
literally do anything. Yeah.
But have skill players? I don't know. Does Georgia have skill players? Do you think Gunnar Stockton and Ryan Puglisi is a real quarterback battle, or is this lip service? Ryan Puglisi is a young second-year guy. He was like a top 10 quarterback. A lot of people liked him, but he's not exactly, he's not Dylan Raiola. Is that lip service? And it's definitely going to be Gunnar Stockton, the guy who was the backup last year and finished the season and played in the playoff? Or do you think that could be possibly real because Puglisi maybe has an upside?
I definitely just knowing what I know of them as prospects, I would agree with the assessment that Puglisi has more of an upside, but I think it's going to be Stockton. I think it's probably a competition in name only.
Okay. No good non-conference game for Georgia this year because last summer they canceled their UCLA series, and it was the schools agreed to cancel it. So that's like Georgia always, like they played Clemson last year. Georgia always schedules one of those series to their credit, and they don't have it this year. So they canceled UCLA in 25 and 26. So their non-conference is Marshall, Austin Peay, Charlotte, and then the Georgia Tech season ender. And then 8 conference games in the SEC. So they swapped UCLA for Marshall. Yeah. So the schedule a little easier that way, but at Tennessee, September 13th, Alabama, September 27th, Ole Miss, October 18th, Florida, November 1st, Texas, November 15th. Same deal again. They got real ones. I don't know. I know what the deal is, and I think they're mad that last year didn't go how they wanted it to go, and they upped the NIL, and the Branch brothers coming in from USC is proof of that. But I don't know, man. Do I have to go fearsome just because of dog mentality? And of course they have talent. Or is this kind of the same team that has sort of a, I don't know, okay quarterback, and then lacking skill players? And yeah, they have some defensive guys who are going to fly around, but am I scared? Are they feared? Am I fearing Georgia? For real, do I have to fear Georgia? I don't want to. Fraud.
Is there a difference?
Screw it. Fraud. Fraud.
Can you differentiate between fear and respect?
Yeah, I can. Respect. They have lots of talent. Kirby Smart has won football games. Of course they're going to be pretty good, right? They're not going to go 7-5. But a year ago, I was sort of between 10-2 and 9-3. with Georgia, right? Going into the year, which is exactly where they landed. They went 10-2 and they went into 19 overtimes against Georgia Tech to avoid 9-3. So if you think that, if that's what you think Georgia is, fraud. Because that's not scary. That's not feared. Oh, so that's where I am. What am I scared of? Other than like depth of talent, I get it. But like for real, like you're gonna what? Just have an injured Notre Dame team out coach you and beat you in the playoff? This is not like, is Georgia going to make the playoff? This is like, if Georgia makes the playoff, is anybody scared of them? No. Fraud.
I would lean a little more toward Fearsome, I think.
Oh, it feels so good over here in fraud.
Yeah,
Oh,
I know.
Check out that. Oh my God, does that feel good? Let me get my swords out again. Come on. You don't want to look at it. I'm on vacation over here. Oh, I got off on it was 2 miles ahead. It was the Dog Mentality Junction. And I got off in Fraudville. They have they have a Buc-ee's in Fraudville. Oh my God. Got some of that brisket sandwich in Fraudville. Oh, it feels good here. You're welcome anytime. Listen, I know you're in Fearsome Junction, right next to it's Dog Mentality Junction and Fearsome Junction. There's the river cuts them in half. I know that's where you parked your RV. Come on down to Fraudville anytime you want, brother. We're here.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous to be on these roads with dogs driving around, but we'll.
Producer Mike is suggesting.
Yeah,
our April Fool's joke should. Yeah. Our April Fool's joke should have been no Georgia players arrested for driving infractions.
No one would have believed us, though.
No.
Yeah, that's true.
They'd have been like a clear April Fool's joke.
Georgia players cited for going 47 in a 50. Maybe wanted to keep it cool for a little bit. All right. So we're split on this. You're going Fearsome.
I'm split on this. I don't know what to make of Georgia. I lean toward like the respect of the talent, I guess. But like I would say I find Texas far more fearsome than Georgia, even though Georgia beat them twice last year.
Let me tell you, you can do this respectfully. You're a fraud.
How
about that?
Yeah. Okay.
Fraudville. We got plenty of rooms here. Everybody's welcome. We're going to be cooking out, have a little music on. Everyone's invited to Fraudville. Wear your hat. All right. Bama.
Yeah. Bama.
What do you got? Bama. Oh, Georgia, by the way, plus 700 to win the national title, 9.5 on the over-under. Bama also 9.5 on the win total. 16-1 to win the national title for Bama.
Yeah. But doesn't currently know who its quarterback's going to be, although I guess a lot of the spring reporting says it's probably going to be Ty Simpson, who is a former big-time prospect who's been the backup the last couple of years behind Jalen Milroe. There's also Austin Mack, who came with Kalen DeBoer from Washington, who we liked at the time, but now he's in the South, so we don't like him anymore. And then Keelan Russell, 5-star quarterback in this current recruiting class, is also in the battle. We had a conversation about Bama. When did we talk about Bama? I can't remember. We talked about like I'm actually in on Bama, like bouncing back a little bit, but part of it was maybe Russell actually being the quarterback, and like even though he's a freshman, showing some upside, and like maybe making that offense a little something better than it was last year. I actually think Bama's defense, which was like number 10 in the country by the Fermo ratings last year, stands to be pretty good. They're 37th in the country in returning production on defense. They're 35th overall in returning production, which is like pretty high for an Alabama team. Got to figure out quarterback, have to figure out a couple starters on the offensive line. A lot of talk in early spring about the receiver position and how Kalen DeBoer thinks it's better than it was maybe last year. They have the potential to be better. Ryan Williams obviously is there. Jeremy Bernard is still there. They added Isaiah Horton, a transfer from Miami, who was one of the higher rated transfer receivers in the portal this year. Ryan Grubb is back with Kalen DeBoer, his former offensive coordinator, who they briefly parted ways when DeBoer went to Alabama. Now they're back together. Like, I think that matters. Schedule at Florida State, Wisconsin, at Georgia, at Missouri, Tennessee at home, at South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, at Auburn. I don't know, man. Like we had it when we did the playoff talk. I had Bama in the playoff. So, and you didn't.
Did I? Oh,
no. So I guess I would say somewhat fearsome, if I can put a qualifier on it, because I think they're going to bounce back and make the playoff this year. They were 1 win away from making it last year.
Fraud.
Yeah.
There was a team that hired a coach, and Kalen was his name. Oh, F-R-A-U-D-F. Not a fraud overall. Just there. Not going to work. It's over. Didn't work.
I think Christopher makes a good point. Like, they can make the playoff and still not be that scary. Like, I think that's fair. Yeah.
Can I just also, like, for the record, what Alabama is trying to do is reclaim the glory of Washington football. That is officially where we are. It's like, oh, everything is okay. The OC from Washington's here now. Oh, is that where you are, Bama? Like lightning in a bottle. Like, you can't replicate what Washington did. They had 400 COVID guys and like magical receiver recruiting, and Michael Penix fell out of the sky like a miracle. And then Bama was like, that. What? The guy was at Fresno State? Is that for real? That's the thing? You know, it was a miracle, right? It's kind of a lightning in a bottle COVID miracle. Okay. Good luck in the South. I'm sure it'll be great. Fraud. Clemson. What's your official thing? Fearsome?
Yes, but only because I painted myself into a corner by putting Alabama in the playoff already.
Okay. That's not my, I don't paint that way. Clemson.
Oh, yeah.
We've talked about Clemson kind of a lot. We talked about some of their like recruiting stuff going on. They're moving a receiver to running back. It feels like they have a bunch of guys at running back, but they're moving Adam Randall, who's a 6'2", 232-pound, kind of like didn't quite make it at receiver. He's playing running back this spring. Everybody's excited about that, but they'll have multiple guys there. Will Help, right? Transfer from Purdue. Just one of those things again. How did Purdue win one game and then lose their last 11? And then like everybody in the country was rating their roster. People could not. Oregon, Ohio State, and Clemson were like, give us Dylan Thieneman, Max Clare, and Will Help yesterday. And Ryan Walters was like, we got no shot here. We lost by 66 to Notre Dame.
I think it's 4 Purdue guys are going to be starting on like teams that want to make the playoff this year.
Yeah. What did they do last year? He actually probably deserved to be fired. It didn't really work out so well. Clemson, good defensive line, right? Will Help joining TJ Parker, Peter Woods, both like hugely talented guys. Let me give you this, though. I didn't quite have a handle on this. We knew they fired the DC Wes Goodwin and brought in Tom Allen from Penn State. Last year, the Fermo Index, we love it. Clemson's defense was ranked 27th last year in the nation in the Fermo Index. Do you know, previous to that, when the last time was they were out of the top 10?
Like 2011?
2013. So Wes Goodwin took over for Brent Venables. They had the 27th defense last year. They were 3rd and 10th the previous 2 years. Under Venables, going backwards, 4th, 3rd, 1st, 9th, 5th, 1st, and then 18th in 2013. His first year was 2012, and they were 58th. So it took him 2 years to get it going. And then Brent Venables had a top 10 defense every year. And then the guy who was on the staff and took over for him kept it going for 2 more years, and then it fell off. So now, like if we were Tom Allen is one of the most important people in college football.
Yes.
So he's not in our bracket because we didn't do anything in the South, but I had to like check myself on like how much is riding on him getting this defense back in shape, because they do have some talent, but they couldn't stop anybody last year. And
their run defense is especially bad. Yeah.
Kate Klubnik's going to be great, but if they can't stop anybody, they're not scaring anybody. And like Dabo fired the guy who had been on the staff for a long time and like looked around the country and said, who am I putting my faith in to do this? And he picked Tom Allen. It's huge for Tom Allen. So I'm still going to say fearsome, but I'm pulled back a little bit on like, holy moly, they better get this defense right, or they're going to be half a team again, which is crazy to think about.
It is an odd spot for them to be in. I think they get it back right on defense. We talked about how they're number 2 in the country in returning production overall. They're 1st in offensive. They're 7th in defensive. I think Dabo is very much in the national title conversation this year. So I'm fearsome. I'm a firm fearsome on this one. No, somewhat.
Firm fearsome. Okay.
Yeah, firm fearsome.
I was a firm fearsome coming in, and now I'm a half fearsome.
Okay.
So, all right. 18-1 to win the national title. Also 9.5 on the win total. Tennessee, 9.5 on the win total. This is the last one. So the 5 teams in the South, 9.5 win total. Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, Tennessee. 16-1 to win the national title. What do you have for the Vols?
Tennessee being in that 9.5 win club is purely reflective of its schedule, and I think not so much of its talent level. They play Georgia and Alabama, but otherwise have a pretty navigable path to like 9 or 10 wins. But they lose a lot on offense. They're 58th in returning production, but they're 87th on offense. They're 22nd on defense with 67% of their production back, which is a nice number, but they're also like not bringing back their best 2 defensive players, and Jermel McCoy and James Pierce. One offensive line starter back. Dylan Sampson's gone. They've added some transfers on the O-line, including Sam Pendleton from Notre Dame, a receiver, a running back. Nico Iamaleava is obviously back at quarterback, and people are excited about him, and I think expecting him to take a jump. But I think Tennessee's defense will be good, but I don't really see how it's as good as it was last year. And while like the offensive, like Josh Heupel's talking about trying to find some more explosive plays in the offense, I don't know necessarily that the pieces are there for them to do that. So I actually think their offense could end up being worse than it was last year. So I am fraud here, but I also want to be cognizant of this schedule, and that even if they aren't particularly excellent, that they still might find their way to 9 or 10 wins, and if they do that, then they can still make the playoff. But I don't find them,
and then get their butts kicked because they got in on schedule only. Yeah,
which is what happened last year. Yeah.
You a Nico believer or no? Like
I'm not a big Nico guy. No.
Okay. I had Fearsome, but you talked me into fraud. Like didn't take me much. Fraud. Okay. Fraud on Tennessee. 16-1 to win the national title. LSU 20-1 to win the national title. 8.5 on the win total. They are leaning on transfers more than anybody that matters. They have the number one recruiting transfer class for LSU in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. They have the 24th most commits in the transfer portal. They have, I think, 16. Okay. But like the teams that have the most transfers are like Purdue and Central Florida. And
West
teams
Virginia's
that are like completely rebuilding their roster, or teams that are just like, well, our best chance to compete is in the transfer portal. LSU has more transfers than any blue blood. I think the only real playoff contenders with more are Indiana and Ole Miss, but I don't have them, like they're not the same overall kind of program as LSU. So This is like a huge swing by Brian Kelly trying to get the NIL together. This is their strategy, but it just remains, again, one of these things again. All these guys, and it's great. Players getting opportunities at new schools, wonderful. But you have to be realistic. Like the new school is like, oh, this guy. And then you go back and look at his old school. It's like, he's fun. So this is not like, I think there's a lot of LSU being like, oh, this guy, with guys who were fine before. Fraud.
Mm-hmm. I don't like Brian Kelly. Fraud.
They do, and we had Sid Irish in the chat was asking about like this Clemson play Georgia again this year. Clemson LSU in the opener. That's like a big week 1 thing that obviously we don't care about. We'll keep an eye on it. At Clemson, opening weekend, August 30th. So we'll get I'll watch it.
Yeah,
we'll that will tell us some stuff. Ole Miss 25-1 to win the national title. Also 8.5 on the over/under. What do you got?
So I didn't know this. I want to know how this hits you. So Lane Kiffin has won 10 or more games 3 times at Ole Miss, including the last 2 seasons. Do you know how many times since 1970, how many other times Ole Miss has won 10 games?
3.
Yeah. They like had their heyday before that with was it Johnny Vault, right?
Okay.
But since 1970 has not been like a perennial 10-win team, but like Lane Kiffin like kind of has it going there a little bit. So I do want to be respectful of that, I guess, as I try to figure out what a team is going to look like as it is again working in the transfer portal.
God forbid we not respect Lane Kiffin.
He does get dismissed as like a punchline a lot, and like he brings it on himself. So I'm not saying it's undeserved, but like he wins football games. Austin Simmons is going to be their quarterback. He's been their backup the last couple of years. I actually think Lane Kiffin's done a pretty nice job with their quarterbacks at Ole Miss with Matt Corral and Jackson Dart. Like this is the next guy. So maybe he'll be pretty good. But they have 22 transfers coming in. They lose like all of their production on both sides of the ball from last year. It's a totally remade roster yet again. I don't really know what to make of it. So I'm gonna call him fraudulent with like a tip of the cap to Lane for winning 10 games in a place that doesn't always do it.
I actually will agree with all of that. But this, I'll go fraud because it's like when you start, this is like the level of team when it's like based on what Georgia under Kirby Smart and Alabama under Nick Saban have done. Then all of a sudden we're throwing every SEC team in there like, we're right in that range. The Tennessee, LSU, Ole Miss propped up by the actual winners in the SEC. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't mean that they can't win 10 games. It doesn't mean they can't be this 10 seed in the playoff, but are you scared of them? Now, if Austin Simmons is awesome, right? I don't know, but like, are you also going to get through? This is part of it with Lane Kiffin, right? They still lose games they shouldn't lose.
Sure.
And so they have not locked down, like, we win all those, and then we're also going to go beat Georgia. Like, they'll go beat Georgia and then lose to Kentucky. So, like, if you're going to be feared, if you're going to be, like, a real program and elevate, you can't do that stuff anymore. And I think they're still smack dab in the middle of doing that. And I just don't know, like, okay, I understand why Indiana works the portal. Like, is Lane Kiffin and Brian Kelly trying to do it in the mighty SEC to be a team that we're supposed to be scared of? I don't buy it. So fraud.
Yeah, people tried to make us fear Ole Miss last year, right? Yes. They were a very trendy playoff pick. Like, watch out for Ole Miss. Here they come. They're loaded up to go get a national title, and they didn't make the playoff. So, like, maybe this is like you're overlooking them now. They're kind of lying in wait. I don't know, but like if that roster last year couldn't do it, I'm not going to say this roster this year is going to do it.
And maybe they're good enough to be feared, like in the SEC, like they'll jump up and bite somebody. Yeah. Do we in the North? This is why when I was on with my buddy John Steppe, who covers Iowa, and he was like, I like Jackson Dart for the Heisman, and I like absolutely chastised him. That is not what we have to be doing up here, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have to pretend and get sucked in by the nonsense. So we don't have to get sucked in by Garrett Nussmeier mania at LSU this year. Let things unfold. But like in the top half of the country, your Heisman ballot in September doesn't have to have big stat SEC quarterback for future 9-3 team at the top of it. Okay. Let them do that. That's not what we have to do up here. Fraud. Miami fraud. 33-1, 8.5 win total. Carson Beck is going to be their quarterback, coming back from UCL surgery. Hopefully he can come back healthy. Nobody wants to see a guy have an injury like that. I don't know, man, but like he's going to be Cam Ward because that worked. Didn't work enough to get in the playoff. Didn't work enough to beat Syracuse in a gotta have it game when everybody was like, watch out for Miami. So I guess was Miami last year feared or a fraud as we try to establish what they are this year?
I guess they ended up being a fraud, right? At least from our standpoint. Like when Syracuse had to play them, they beat them, and they didn't make the playoff for anybody else in the North to care about them. So, I would say they were fraudulent. Fun, maybe fun at times, but fraudulent. Yeah,
fungulent. Yeah, but not feared. Those guys, those crazy Hurricanes. Last second diving in the end zone stuff where the refs give them a break and they win games that way. But this is another one. Like you're right. Like Ari was like, watch out for Miami. And we were like, what are you doing? And then they were frauds.
And so I don't know if they're going to be fun this year. Cause I don't know, like Cam Ward's a fun quarterback, right?
Yeah.
He thrives on the chaos. Carson Beck might fold. Like the $4 million weight on his shoulders. He's in a banger with Cal Berkeley in the fourth quarter trying to figure out how to win the game.
Sid Irish says Notre Dame will beat Miami by 17. Welcome, Sid, to the chat. So like that kind of thing. Now, good offensive line, right? Good experienced, highly rated offensive line. So like respect that, but also like let's get back like this. Like I just don't think Carson Beck in his career so far has been what people made him out to be at one point, and now he's coming off like a very serious injury. So again, good luck to him in his recovery. But like that. And so you're just going to replicate the guy who turned into the number 1 pick in the draft? Like I think that's a silly thing to do. And also, by the way, they wound up being frauds last year. Fraud. We're both fraud on Miami. Texas A&M. What do you got?
Weird profile. 6th in returning production, 19th on offense, 12th on defense, number 10 transfer class, and the number 6 transfer class by average player rating, according to 24/7 Sports. Some of that rating is still propped up by Micah Hudson, who was a former 5-star high school receiver who was at Texas Tech, who transferred to Texas A&M and now is no longer with Texas A&M. So you can knock them down a little bit on the average player rating thing there. But they got KC Concepcion from North Carolina, who's one of the better transfer receivers in the portal. Excuse me. Marcel Reed is back at quarterback. Like, he's kind of interesting and exciting and runs around a lot. I think he's got to get a little bit better as a passer. Their win total is 7.5. Which is probably on the lower side when you think about the trajectory they'd like to be on with Mike Elko. I don't take them seriously as like a national contender. I think they could be tricky within the SEC, like maybe similar to an Ole Miss. So I would say fraudulent, but perhaps throughout the course of the year, we are celebrating some of their upset wins that derail some of the SEC playoff contenders. They play at Notre Dame. So, like, keep an eye on them there. Auburn, Florida, at LSU, at Missouri, South Carolina, at Texas. So, like, it's not don't play Georgia, don't play Bama. So it's not like an incredibly daunting schedule, but I don't know. That was a team that wasn't quite as good as people thought it was going to be last year. Quarterback kind of got messy for them. So if quarterback's not as messy, like, maybe it's different, but I don't know that I view A&M as anything other than a team that might spring some key upsets in the SEC.
Yeah, and that's one of those, like, then those guys are our friends. Like, if they're like goofy enough to knock off Bama and Georgia and Tennessee and LSU, great. But here's and this is really how I want us, like, our audience to be thinking about this stuff. Is like, when we get to the point, we get to October, and Texas A&M springs something, right? And then it's like, oh, like, is it real, or is it like, So we would tell you they're frauds. You don't have to react to it. South Carolina, I'm torn on this. Texas A&M was 30-1, by the way, in the national title odds, and the 7.5 win total. South Carolina, 7.5 win total, 40-1 on the national title odds. They're Kansas State to me, and here's why. They're not as good as Kansas State, but Kansas State, Matt Wells, veteran guy, former head coach, on the staff, now elevating to offensive coordinator because the other guy left, with a no longer young, supremely talented quarterback that you have to get the most out of, right? That is huge for Matt Wells and Kansas State to be able to do that this year with Avery Johnson. Do you know who the South Carolina offensive coordinator is?
Nope.
Mike Shula, former Alabama, pre-Saban Alabama head coach, Mike Shula. Because their OC left for the App State job, he was on staff last year. Shane Beamer elevated him. He is charged with getting the most out of the supremely talented Lenore Sellers. And if we want to have, we could do Lenore Sellers, Avery Johnson, kind of all day. So Lenore Sellers can run. Mike Shula is talking about, we want to make sure we let him run and maximize his running ability without using him too much. All this stuff. Huge. The hard thing about South Carolina, I had them in my playoff when we did this a couple weeks ago. They have two players, which is are 2 players enough? So they have Lenora Sellers, who's one of the most talented, exciting quarterbacks in the country. And they have Dylan Stewart as an edge guy who's a monster, 5-star monster on edge. But they lost a lot. They lost 7 defensive starters to the NFL draft. They had a bunch of guys at the combine. I might be out over my skis on them because they lost their depth of talent, but they have 2 studs back at the positions, frankly, that matter the most. But is that enough? So I'm still fearsome, but I'm not quite as in on them as I was a month ago.
Yeah, neither am I. That was definitely a team coming off of last season that I was thinking they probably belong in the playoff conversation. I don't know if the 2 players are enough to get them there. Maybe they are.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a situation where they lost too much and the schedule's probably too hard for that to be the case.
Yeah. So I mean, it's, Virginia Tech's their big non-conference game. That'll be a fun, interesting game on Sunday, the first weekend of the season. They definitely could start 5-0 into an off week at LSU. So if they're 5-0 and going to LSU off a bye on October 11th, okay, let's see what's up. Then they have Bama, at Ole Miss, at Texas A&M, and then Clemson to end the regular season. That was a big game last year. It could be a big one again this year. All right, so I'm still fearsome, and you're what? You're fearsome but leaking as am I?
Yeah, probably.
No.
It's probably
okay.
Yeah.
Florida, 50-1 for Florida, 6.5 on the win total. What do you got? DJ Lagway.
So there's two questions. One, how far do you think DJ Lagway can take Florida sort of like on his own? And two, how much does it concern you that he's not throwing the ball in spring practice?
Oh,
what? Yeah, like
That's
DJ Lagway spring highlights are him taking mental reps and handing the ball off. They describe, I think that they initially said Billy Napier said he was going to have like limited throwing in spring, but as far as I can tell, he is yet to throw the ball in spring practice, which is concerning because I don't know that anyone's aware of like an upper body injury with DJ Lagway that would make him unable to throw the ball. He got hurt last year. I think he's got some lower body stuff that he's been dealing with. But he's clearly a tremendous talent. He was 6-1 as a starter last year. The only game he lost as a starter was the Georgia game where he left right before halftime with an injury, but they were winning when he left the game.
And then they put in the transfer third stringer from Yale.
From Yale, right. So we could be talking about a guy who was 7-0 as a starter with a win against Georgia. And I think that was probably likely to happen had he not gotten hurt in that game. So, like, he's awesome. He has a chance, I think, to be maybe the best quarterback in college football this year. So that's a lot. That can take a team pretty far. The schedule, yet again, is pretty difficult, as it was last year, which is why the win total is only 6.5. Did not do a ton on the portal, which is kind of surprising for a coach who's on the hot seat. Billy Napier, like he didn't go out there and frantically try to reshape his roster. They only added 5 guys.
It's called the Brian Kelly strategy.
They only added 5 guys in the transfer portal. One of them was J. Michael Sturdivant, receiver from UCLA. It seems like they like their receivers. They have a decent amount of returning production back on defense. So, like, I think Florida is probably the top candidate to be like surprise SEC team this year, but I don't know that I want to say that they're definitely going to be. So I would put them again more in the category of watch your back if you got to play them if you're in the SEC, but maybe not as fearsome if you're looking at it from our perspective.
So what is wrong with me? I'm looking at this. South Carolina has 2 players. Florida has 1 player, and I was like fearsome for both. But that's wrong. Fearsome to who? I was looking up how many national championships Anthony Richardson won at Florida. Do you know how many he won at Florida?
Anthony Richardson,
yeah, the quarterback who was the number 5 pick in the draft.
0,
it turns out. I couldn't remember. He was his last year at Florida. He started 12 games and was 6-6. So I was just double checking if Florida has ever had supremely talented quarterbacks who are great NFL prospects who don't lead to winning. And it turns out they did, like 2 years ago. So I'm not
Kyle
saying
Trask was the one that got him to the SEC title game before that. Yeah.
Kyle Trask got to New York. Heisman finalist. I'll go fraud because I think this is right. This is like, again, this list of SEC teams who might bite somebody, but we don't have to worry about them. You guys figure out your stuff.
I don't know, like, if they won 5 games, I wouldn't be surprised. And if they won 10 games, I wouldn't be surprised because I think DJ Lagway is that good. So, but because of that variance exists, like, I'm going to call him a fraud.
That's Christopher P in the chat exactly just said that. Good heavens, what is the Gators variance? I mean, they could win 3 or 10.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Gators variance. Give it up for Gators variance. USC, Oklahoma together. USC 120-1 to win the national title. Oklahoma 75-1. USC win total 7.5. Oklahoma win total 6.5. One of these coaches will be fired during the season. Lincoln Riley at USC or Brent Venables
during the season.
Oklahoma,
okay, let's go.
During the season. Right. That is my pick. Obviously, Brent Venables took over at Oklahoma after Lincoln Riley left for USC. Brent Venables is 22-17 in 3 years at Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley is 26-14 in 3 years at USC. They both have spots to get fired. Oklahoma, week 2, Michigan. Then this is their October. October 11th, Texas. October 18th at South Carolina. October 25th, Ole Miss. November 1st at Tennessee. They could definitely be like 5-5 at some point because then they have a bye week and then they go to Bama. And I think if Oklahoma's 5-5, they're going to be like, we're done. This didn't work. We got to get started. So I think that could happen, and Venables could get fired. USC, I think, could start 4-0. Then they're at Illinois September 27th, off. Then back-to-back Michigan at Notre Dame. And then later in the month, they're off the last weekend in October, and then they're at Nebraska November 5th. I think they could be 4-4. I think they could start 4-0 and then lose their next 4 at Illinois, Michigan, at Notre Dame, at Nebraska. And if they're 4-4, do you get out ahead of it and say, we're on to the next thing and let's start our coaching search? I think both are possible. I think at least one of those two happens. John Mateer, the transfer from Washington State at quarterback from Oklahoma. Brent Venables put his life in his hands. And Ben Arbuckle. And by the way, Oklahoma's Utah. Yes. So Kyle Whittingham hired the OC from New Mexico and brought the quarterback from New Mexico, Jason Beck, Devin Dampier. Oklahoma did it with Washington State, Ben Arbuckle, the OC, and John Mateer, the quarterback. So Devin Dampier, John Mateer, both propping up these guys. But Kyle Whittingham has 20 years of success at Utah. Brent Venables has not won as a head coach. So again, like most important people in the South, John Mateer and Tom Allen, way up there. And then Jaden Maeva, the transfer from UNLV, who started like the last 4 games for USC last year. Lincoln Riley, like his career's in his hands right now. Young quarterback, could be pretty good, but I don't like either of these spots. So I'm obviously going fraud. Who do you think is more likely to get fired, Brent Venables or Lincoln Riley?
Ooh, Venables. Do you think so? I'm looking at Oklahoma's schedule. Open with Illinois State. Play Michigan at home at Temple.
Yep.
So Michigan can beat them, right?
For sure.
Okay.
I think Michigan will beat them. Yeah.
So if Oklahoma is 2-1,
do it
with a win against Illinois State and a win against Temple with a loss to Michigan, and then is playing at home against Jackson Arnold on September 20th and loses to Auburn before an off week, does Brent Venables survive a loss to Auburn that would make them 2-2?
Not like going into Red River. Like, maybe not. Like, what's the point? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Also, I thought you were opening the door for Casey Keeler.
No, I don't think it is in Philly. You have to keep that in mind. They got to go into the raucous confines of Lincoln Financial Field.
Can you go? You're going. Go home, see your family in Philly, and then go to the news conference and win or lose. Ask Brent Venables when he thinks he's going to be fired.
Yeah. How much pressure are you feeling to beat Jackson Arnold? Because people think Auburn's going to be good.
Keelered. Boom. Keelered.
Yeah. Losing at home to Jackson Arnold, I think, would be enough to get Brent Venables fired.
But they're both frauds, right?
Yeah.
All right. Wrap it up with Arizona State. What do you got? 120 to 1 to win the national title, which is just, I mean, it's like, I find it odd for like a real Big 12 contender. It's just the odds are like, well, nobody outside the SEC or the Big 10 can win the national title. And that's how we're going to do it. I think it's odd. 8.5 on the win total for Arizona State.
It's like practically everything's back except for Cam Scadaboo, which I realize that's like a big except. Like he was basically their entire offense last year, but they're number 2 in returning production behind Clemson. They're 4th on offense. They're 2nd in defense. Like practically the entire defense is back. I think there's one starter that's not back on defense. Sam Levitt's back at quarterback, who, like, in this entire conversation we've had, maybe with the exception of DJ Lagway, could be the best quarterback a team has. So, like, if Sam Levitt's better than Cade Klubnik this year, I don't think it'd be shocked by that. Jordan Tyson's back at receiver. 4 offensive line starters are back. To replace Cam Scadaboo, they went out and got Kanye Udo from Army, who we liked last year when he was playing at Army, right? So he's a good running back. That's a transition to power conference football and out of an option like offense into Arizona State's offense, but I think he'll be pretty good there. The schedule is like a Big 12 schedule, so like I don't know exactly what to make of it, but I don't know why you wouldn't consider them fearsome if they won the Big 12 and made the playoff and bring back basically their entire team, short of their one star player who I think they did a decent job of replacing in the transfer portal.
Yeah. I think I say fearsome too. And I like and we're still doing the thing where you get the first round bye for winning your conference, just like they did last year. And then they almost beat Texas.
Yep.
So, and if they had, I just don't know. And then like, were they going to beat Ohio State in the semis? Probably not. But are we sure there's going to be an Ohio State out there this year? Like, the idea to be at like 120 to 1, I'd put $2 on that. Right. So I'll say fearsome for Arizona State. We didn't do Texas Tech Like, do you want to 8.5?
Well, I didn't. There were two teams. So I mentioned our friend of the program, Shahan Jeharaja at CBS earlier. Yeah. He did like a win total thing for the Big 12, and he had both Texas Tech and Baylor with 10 wins. And we don't have either of those teams here. But like, I would just put them. They're not in the same category as Arizona State because Arizona State is the defending Big 12 champions. But like, I think Texas Tech or Baylor could win the Big 12. So in that respect, I do think we'd have to consider them fearsome. Without like going through exactly what they're. I mean, everyone knows Texas Tech is dropping all that oil money to go try to get to the playoff this year, and Baylor returns, a lot from last year's team that played well in the second half of the season, but including a really good quarterback in Sawyer Robertson. So, like, I we want to see Kansas State and Kansas and Utah maybe take a run at winning the Big 12.
BYU.
So BYU, yeah. So. I would consider Baylor and Texas Tech a little more fearsome than some of the schools we've discussed here, just because of the dynamic.
Okay. The true fearsome schools, though, see if like these teams really could like have an impact on the best Northern teams, which is primarily like they could beat some of the good Northern teams in the playoff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it 3? Texas,
Clemson,
and Arizona State.
Yeah.
And then it's like, so like what? And then, we're not putting Georgia and Alabama there. Like, we know they have depth of talent, but if they are the same if they're not better than last year, then don't be afraid. Put it back on. Give me those swords again.
That's actually a good way to frame it. Like, do you think, I think Alabama is going to be better than it was last year. But I'm not convinced at all that Georgia would be.
I think Jalen Milroe was like a get out of jail free card for a lot of stuff for their offense last year. And then like, is Ty Simpson going to be as good as Jalen Milroe? And also like, I still don't know that they maximized Jalen Milroe, but that dude had some stuff. And, but you think the defense is going to be better? I don't know. Kalen DeBoer.
I also wonder if maybe like Jalen Milroe is like an incredible athlete, a quarterback who's got a cannon for an arm. Does he process things the way that Kalen DeBoer would like his quarterback to process things? Is he accurate the way that Kalen DeBoer would like his quarterback to be accurate? I don't know. And I'm not saying the guys I have this year definitely will be, but I guess they would say they stand a chance to be.
Yeah. Get back. I'll wait to see it. But like in the meantime, I'm not expecting either Bama or Georgia to be substantively different than what they were last year. Sure. And last year, Alabama was just good enough to miss the playoff, and Georgia was good enough to win the SEC and then lose its first playoff game. So, and in a game that like you and I and most of this audience thought Notre Dame was going to win that game. And all I said all year was, we're not afraid. We're not scared of Georgia. And if there were people who were picking, and there were people picking Georgia win the national title, we thought that was silly because we didn't think they had what it took. And we were 0% surprised and Notre Dame didn't play a perfect game, but they made winning plays when they needed to.
Mm-hmm.
And Georgia's quarterback got hurt. But then Connor Stockton played pretty well when he came in. He wasn't the reason they lost that game. We were not surprised that Notre Dame beat Georgia. So then for what Georgia is perceived to be, I think last year was Georgia fearsome or a fraud last year? I would say they were a fraud. And I'm expecting that, if not even a little worse. I'm not expecting better. And I'll admit it if I'm wrong, but that's why I would say that I'm not there on adding them to our fearsome list of Texas, Clemson, Arizona State.
I don't disagree with any of that. I think you're right.
Okay. Dog mentality.
The hat on the crown doesn't work.
Hat on the crown. No, it doesn't work. No. It's a king hat. That's what they call this, a king hat.
King hat.
Let's do our bracket. Final four. Who's going to be the most important person in Northern College football in 2025? We'll figure that out next on KOTN. Doug and Bill, like, subscribe, tell a friend about Kings of the North. If you're here live in the YouTube chat, man, it's just awesome. Thanks for everybody being here. Sid Irish and Christopher P. and Buckeye Yard and everybody else who's part of it here. We certainly appreciate you being here. If you're watching back on YouTube, awesome. Thanks for doing that. If you're listening on podcast, thank you so much for being part of the show. Did you have fun with the bracket? We did 4 regions to create this Final Four. We did a coaches region, we did a quarterback region, we did an offensive player non-quarterback region, and a defensive player region. Was it a worthwhile, fulfilling, enjoyable exercise?
Yeah, I thought so. I struggled a lot with the seeding. I think we ended up with a good Final Four, but I think the fact that we have like a 10 seed in the Final Four maybe suggests that we could have done a little bit better with the actual seeding of it. Yeah. But no, I enjoyed the exercise. It helped me kind of form my thoughts a little better on what I think the North's going to be this year.
Nobody else would come up with a Final Four like this. Many people would come up with a Final Four that includes James Franklin, Penn State coach, and Jeremiah Smith, Ohio State receiver. You will not find another show in the country that is throwing Koi Perich and Jalon Daniels into this conversation.
Yeah.
So it's just where we landed. And we easily could have landed on Bryce Underwood at quarterback or Avery Johnson at quarterback. We easily could have landed on Caleb Downs or Dylan Thieneman or somebody else as the defensive player. But this is where we are. So let's get to our bracket. Show them the bracket, Mike. Oh, my God, it's a beautiful thing. We have Jalon Daniels versus Jeremiah Smith in one Final Four and James Franklin versus Koi Perich in another. Again, this is how important you are to your team, how important your team is to the North, how much of your individual excellence might be something that fans care about, that we talk about. And so obviously when you think about what Jeremiah Smith is to Ohio State, the defending national champ, when you think about James Franklin, like the head coach of a team that is trying to get over the top, this is tremendous, like obviously. But then also Jalon Daniels, his individual excellence, he was so good in the second half of last year. He turned the ball over so much in the first half of last year. Kansas beat 3 ranked teams at the end of the year, and his individual excellence was part of that. And then Koi Perich, a home state guy who stays committed to Minnesota, makes a real impact as a defensive player and a return guy as a true freshman, stays at Minnesota, doesn't transfer out of there. We just talked about earlier in the show what Minnesota football's doing right now. This guy's a shining example of keeping a Northern player home and what that can mean, both on the field and off to a program. So this is where we are. This is how we got here. Jalon Daniels versus Jeremiah Smith in the first Final Four. This is the 5:15 tip-off, Landis. It's the early game.
Okay.
Who you make a case for here?
I would probably make the case for Jalon Daniels more than Jeremiah Smith. And again, it's not a conversation about individual greatness, because I think Jeremiah Smith is and probably will show us that he's the best player in college football this year. But I also am reminded that like Ohio State beat Texas in the semifinal in a game where Jeremiah Smith had like 1 catch. Like it's just the nature of his position that sometimes there are going to be a lot of games, frankly, where like maybe he's not going to go off and his team will still find a way to win. Also, Ohio State continues to recruit the receiver position better than anyone in college football. So it's just to say, like, if Jeremiah Smith decided tomorrow that he wanted to wait 2 years of not playing college football and go to the NFL, could Ohio State persist without him? And I think that answer is yes. Not in the same way, but still be a bona fide playoff contender. And I don't know that there's a team in the country whose successes or failures are tied to the play of their quarterback more than Jalon Daniels in Kansas. And if he's really good, as we said when we put him through, if he's really good, then Kansas can win the Big 12.
Yep.
So that's the argument. I think it kind of feels almost cut and dry to me. Like, and people might like get upset about like, of course, Jeremiah Smith is a better football player than Jalon Daniels. That's not the exercise. And because that's not the exercise, I think the winner here is Jalon Daniels.
Yeah. Do you know Jalon Daniels' record as a starting quarterback in college football in his career?
Is it 500?
It is not. It is 14-19.
Okay.
Just so people understand this is Jalon Daniels' career. In 2020, he started 6 games for Kansas, and he went 0-6. In 2021, he started 3 games and he was 1-2. In 2022, he started 9 games. He was 5-4. In 2023, a lot of hype. Started 3 games, got hurt, was 3-0. Last year, started 12 games and was 5-7. Was terrible at the beginning of the year. Was awesome at the end of the year. 14-19. But we have never, for everything he has been, We have never seen, this is his 6th year of playing college football in a way that matters. And we have never seen a full year of good Jalon Daniels.
Mm-hmm.
And what if we get it? If we get it, Kansas becomes a real contender to win the Big 12. If we get it, he will be in the Heisman conversation. If we get it, it will continue to be one of the great turnaround stories in recent college football history, because 5 years ago, when you said who are the worst, who are the worst college football programs in the North, Kansas would have been 68 out of 68. Mm-hmm. In the Power Four, would have been 20 out of 28 in the North. And they're not that anymore. And Lance Leipold is the number one reason for that. But Jalon Daniels is the number 2 reason for that. And he's 14-19. So it is odd to have a 6th year college football player who is still so much about potential. But we know more about Jeremiah Smith after 1 year than we do about Jalon Daniels after 5. Jeremiah Smith, we're like, oh yeah, that guy's good. Jalon Daniels is tantalizing us. And he's like having a midlife crisis. And we're still like, oh, what could that guy be? Jeremiah Smith he's like in 7th grade. And we're like, sure thing. So variance is part of this thing that we've talked about. How high can your high be, but how not guaranteed is your high? Could Jalon Daniels be a Heisman finalist for a Big 12 champ? Is that reasonable?
I think it's, yeah. I wouldn't say it's like likely, but I think it's reasonable.
But it probably won't happen. Jeremiah Smith is awesome, will be awesome. People will be talking about him. Ohio State will be good. But as you said, right, like Ohio State goes on. I think it's crazy. And I actually would justify the 10 seed because it's like, he's not a sure thing. He's 14-19. So it's like, should Jalon Daniels have been the 3 seed in the quarterbacks? It's like, no, he's 14-19. He's gotten hurt a million times. He threw a gazillion picks in the first half of last year, but So I said, I'll agree with Jalon Daniels. You made a compelling case. I didn't think that's where you were going, but I'm there with you.
I don't know, like, for our specific parameters, if a single individual can ever rise above Ohio State to like win this.
I think
it'd be really difficult.
I think a year ago, Ryan Day might have won this going into last season. But I don't know that an Ohio State player could win it. But I think like Will Howard last year for Ohio State as a transfer quarterback, kind of replacing the quarterback that was not quite good enough. And there's a lot of other talent, but they need the quarterback to bring it together. But yeah, I mean, that's why like Caleb Downs is not in the Final Four. Like, would Jack Sawyer have ever made the Final Four? Like, at the very best teams, how would Tez Johnson was super important to Oregon last year, but also like you replace guys like that. Josh Connolly was super important. I think it is harder. I think it is harder at the most elite programs to be the most important guy because there's probably somebody there to replace you.
Right. Yeah. Not that I think Jeremiah Smith is replaceable. Like
he's
fully respectful of the level of talent we're talking about here, which like at a place that churns out first round receivers regularly is something beyond what we've seen. But there's really like there's not a ton of variance there for me.
Do you expect that Jeremiah Smith will go down in history as the best receiver in Ohio State's program ever?
Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah.
But Jalon Daniels.
A good point in the chat. No new quarterback, 2 new running backs, no Emeka Egbuka. The offense will be successful on the back of Jeremiah Smith.
That is true.
I don't disagree with that.
Like Jeremiah Smith is going to be charged with elevating Julian Sayin if he is a presumed winner of the quarterback situation. And they will not be able to rely on the run game like they did with Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. Now, a decent number of offensive linemen back, but they're also starting 2 new tackles from the portal. It's compelling. It is compelling. There's such a reset at Ohio State, and Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs are like the tent poles on each side of the ball. I saw a list the other day. It's like, who are the 2 best players in college football? And Jeremiah Smith was 1 and Caleb Downs was 2. And I don't know that many people would disagree with that.
Yeah.
So Jeremiah Smith is the best player in college football, charged with being the focal point of a revamped Ohio State offense that also has a new play caller?
I would just find that way more compelling if Ohio State had just won the national title.
It's a great point by Vasanth in the chat. It is a great point because we don't want to be. There's a lot riding on this guy. And it's also one of those, it's a continuing conversation. You break in, you do a thing, everybody has a year planned for you, and now they're going to double him. He's never going to have a free release, like all this kind of stuff, right? Yeah, they're going to throw a million things at him, and now he's going to have to be even better than he was as a true freshman in order to do it. And also, he made the play that won the national championship game. He, like the true freshman, put away the national championship with the long catch against Notre Dame. This is what we want. Like this, the chat just shook us
a little bit. Bill. Yeah. And I think too, like we've talked about the idea of like Ohio State as a new Northern dynasty. But in my mind, like I think they're set up for that. But I also don't say that and then like expect Ohio State to win it this year. That's always been a win it twice in 3 years kind of thing. If you can, like there's a little bit of a reload happening now. And then it's like third year Jeremiah Smith, presumably second year Julian Sain. I think a lot of guys on Ohio State's defense could be back in 2026. So because of that, like I lean a little more Jalon Daniels. It's just like
agree, but also the opportunity to repeat.
Yes.
And follow Georgia and follow the Saban dynasty. And Ohio State has never done that in its history. Like repeating is a great opportunity to really make your mark. To your point, it's not, there's no bust it's not repeat or bust. If last year was natty or bust for Ohio State, there's no bust to this, but there is great opportunity here. And the number one guy, and we have Brian Hotline as the 2 seed in the coaches region. Like he's really important to this too. But Jeremiah Smith with a new quarterback and a new play caller can make a lot of people look smart with his excellence. For a team that is trying to do something that has never been done in its history, in the long, illustrious history of Ohio State football. Never repeated.
I'm being swayed.
Kansas, the Big 12 odds to win on FanDuel. Kansas State 6-1, Arizona State 6-1. Texas Tech plus 650, Baylor 7-1, Kansas 8-1, BYU plus 850. And then 2 teams at 12-1, Utah and Iowa State. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 teams between 6-1 and 8.5-1. So a toss-up, a 6-team toss-up in Iowa State and Utah lurking. And I think for as much as we talk about all the other stuff and how important Avery Johnson at K-State is and Sam Levitt at Arizona State and Jake Retzlaff at BYU and everything Texas Tech did in the portal, the number one guy I think who could affect this log jam at the top of the Big 12, Jalon Daniels is the guy that matters the most in that log jam, I think, right? If he does something more. And then that, for Kansas to do that, what Kansas football has been, what this season could be for Kansas football, I mean, it is an extraordinary opportunity, and people will be talking about it. It's also his last year in the sport, and Jeremiah Smith will be back unless Jeremiah Smith decides to just like go train for a year and not play college football. We are certainly not dismissive of the case for Jeremiah Smith. So I'm glad that the chat is bringing us back around from it's Jalon Daniels. Because the opportunity, I am fascinated by the opportunity for Ohio State. And I'll double, I don't even, like off the top of my head, how many teams have won back-to-back championships. I don't know. But in Ohio State, the last time they won the national championship, blew the opportunity to go back-to-back in 2015. So if they could seize that opportunity here, they almost went back-to-back 68-69 and then went up to Michigan and lost in the beginning of the 10-year war when Bo Schembechler beat them. And they were undefeated going into that game. So it's like there have been a lot of really good Ohio State national champions that came back and then could not get it done. I don't know that anybody's expecting it because of everything they lost. But if they do it, Jeremiah Smith will be the number one driver of them doing it. Maybe, like all those guys got him over the top last year. The seniors who came back and Ryan Day figuring it out in the playoff got Ohio State over the top. Okay. Jack Sawyer scoop and score. Who won it for Ohio State in 25? Jeremiah Smith. new OC, new quarterback. The running backs were gone. Emeka Buka was gone. Jeremiah Smith, he was the guy that did it. And by the way, he's in the long history of Ohio State receivers, from Terry Glennon, Joey Galloway, and Chris Carter, Garrett Wilson, and Chris Olave, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Nobody's ever been like Jeremiah Smith. And in his first 2 years in college football, he led Ohio State to back-to-back national championships. But he's no Jalon Daniels.
You're convincing me that it should be Jeremiah Smith. Because also, if Jalon Daniels, if we get the best, most complete, most consistent, dynamic season we've seen in Jalon Daniels' 6-year college career, Kansas could still go 8-4. Right?
No, that is true. Right? We have some questions about. I
do think we've talked a little bit too much like it's a certainty that very good Jalon Daniels means Kansas is going to win the Big 12. I don't think it's that much of a lock.
We have some questions about their skill guys. I think they like some of the running backs that popped in spring, but we have some questions about that. And by the way, an 8-4 year in Kansas,
awesome,
would be good.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would be like, God, I can't believe Jalon Daniels only won 8-4 his last year. What's wrong with that guy? They'll be dancing to their bowl game. They'll be dancing all the way to the Alamo Bowl, right? So that's But will the North be enamored with Kansas football and Jalon Daniels as Jayhawk fans very rightly celebrate their 8-4 season? No, they will not be. We'll talk about them, but they will not dominate our conversation. They would have to win the Big 12 or be in the battle to win the Big 12 into the last weekend of the regular season to do that. Look at this coming back around. Are we swinging?
I think I've changed my mind. I think I've changed my mind to Jeremiah Smith.
I hope we're saying it right. Vasant is really has made an impact here. And they also making the point again, 5 tough games. Texas in the opener, huge game. Jeremiah Smith be on display. Penn State, Illinois, Washington, Michigan. But to open with Texas and to end with Michigan and have a Penn State game in between, those are 3 bangers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've made this argument. I think you could argue that right now the 2 biggest games of the college football season are Ohio State, Texas, and Ohio State, Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Jeremiah Smith?
I have been fully flipped to Jeremiah Smith.
I can't wait for you to be able to tell him this. Jeremiah, just walking off Jeremiah, just got to tell you. Anyway, we did the 64-person bracket, the most important person in the North, and you were the number one. You were you were the number 1 seed in the offensive player region, not in quarterback, of course. Anyway, Jalon Daniels, he won the quarterback region. He was a 10 seed, but then you guys faced off in the Final Four. And initially, Doug and I both thought Jalon Daniels was going to win easily, but then someone in the chat jumped in and said it's Jeremiah Smith, and then you won. And Jeremiah Smith just looked at you and said, "What?" All right, Jeremiah Smith, last second, he just hit a half-court shot.
Yeah, that's a buzzer beater.
Half-court shot. Actually, not a half-court shot. He dunked from half court.
Absolutely.
Took off from half court.
Yeah.
Soared through the air. Jeremiah Smith over Jalon Daniels, which brings us to Koi Perich versus James Franklin.
Which I think is a much shorter conversation. Love Koi Perich. It's James Franklin.
Yeah. All right, it's James Franklin. It's James Franklin versus Jeremiah Smith in the final. Most important person in Northern college football. I think we just made a very compelling Jeremiah Smith case. Can James Franklin beat that? What do you think?
I think he can. Yeah. It would just mean a lot for James Franklin to win the national title. It would mean a lot for obviously Penn State as a program to win a national title. It would mean a lot for Northern football to have a 3rd different team in 3 years win a national title. There's just a lot of opportunity there and a couple different levels for Penn State to do something here. So I actually think it's James Franklin, with still believing wholeheartedly all the things we just discussed about Jeremiah Smith that swayed me to pick him in the first place.
Yeah.
I just think there's a different level of urgency for what James Franklin's staring at this year.
I'm still a little surprised that Penn State's only the 5th best title odds. Ohio State plus 600, Texas plus 650, Oregon plus 650, Georgia plus 700, then Penn State plus 800. And then a little bit of a drop to Notre Dame at plus 1200. That Oregon-Penn State game in September in-state college is huge. I think we've been operating under the assumption that Penn State will win that game. I mean, the variance here on James Franklin is James Franklin could end this season as either a national champion, very realistically, or as maybe definitively not the guy for Penn State.
Yes.
I'm not saying that he would get fired, but with the players they have back and the comparisons that have been made to Michigan 2 years ago, Ohio State last year, guys sticking around, Katron Allen and Nick Singleton sticking around, Denai Dennis Sutton sticking around, Drew Aller sticking around, adding Jim Knowles, having 2 coordinators like this. If not now, when? And if they go 9-3 and miss the playoff, if they go 10-2, even if they go 11-1 or 12-0 and make the playoff, but like losing the quarters, people are going to look at James Franklin and say, like, now I don't think they have to win the national championship, because I don't think you can think about it that way, but they have to play their best in the biggest games. They have to seize the opportunity. They have to look like they're not afraid. They have to look like they're prepared. And even like, I think like that was a weird loss. Again, we talked about the news conference with Marcus Freeman beforehand, and then like the pick at the end, like that game last year in the semis was there for Penn State to win. And I think with all the injuries that Notre Dame had, Penn State probably had more talent, even though they had the injury to Abdul Carter, who played with one arm in that game. Like it was there for them to make the national championship, but they didn't make it. Now it's still a great year. And I don't think that was like a failure by James Franklin. But I think with what you have back, you have to do more. And that doesn't even mean that you have to advance the national title game. But I think like when if you go out, you got to go down swinging. You got to go down with your best. You got to go down with, man, Texas just beat you. Man, Oregon just beat you. What are you going to do? Those 2 awesome teams. So if they don't, not that James Franklin needs defended, but there's nothing holding them back. So I think James Franklin is the most important person in college football this year. Because I don't even right. Is there anybody at Texas? Is Arch Manning more important? Is
maybe
Kirby Smart more important? Like those are the only 2 Southern teams. Everybody else in the North has been vanquished. Like I don't know that I would pick an individual at Texas or Georgia that's more important than James Franklin. So I think James Franklin's the most important person in college football this year.
I think he is too. I think Christopher put it well in the chat that Penn State is the story of Northern football this year, like no matter which way it goes. And like whatever that looks like hinges on James Franklin.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a compelling case for him to win. And then we'll see if it doesn't happen. Like I don't think Penn State would fire him like at all. 1, it's expensive to do so. 2, like it'd be kind of crazy to like fire a guy because he lost in the semifinals or whatever. But if they don't win with this roster as currently constructed, and there are like some compelling SEC jobs open or USC's open, like I could see James Franklin maybe want to reset somewhere. So we'll see how it goes. But this is a lot. Like I said, there's a lot riding on this season for him.
James Franklin wins. I think he was the clear 1 seed in the coaches region. I thought he would have been the odds-on favorite coming in. It's our own bracket, and we make the decisions. So, like, I thought we would get to him. I was certainly open to anybody else, but it is what it is. So we have arrived at James Franklin as the most important Northern person champion. Oh, look at that. Congratulations to James Franklin. You know what? If they don't have a parade in State College this year, they can have a parade for this.
They can.
It'll just be like you and me, like driving James Franklin around State College in a Honda Civic or something. That'll be the parade.
Does Mike have the One Shining Moment package ready to go? Or
yeah.
Give me 10 seconds. It's just exporting right now.
But we would definitely
just like the actual One Shining Moment. Not going to be much in it this year. A little kind of chalky all the way around.
We would get chalky for real. 1 seed wins. We would get our show would be taken down. I can't even sing it fake, or YouTube will take it down. Like I can't even sing a bar.
Can't even like him and what's the word?
Hum.
You can say the ball is kicked. I bet you can say the ball is kicked.
The ball is kicked.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you are.
Spoken word. Yeah, you're a shining star, right? So. Congratulations! This is great. Maybe we can get this. We'll make a not a plaque. We'll just make a certificate.
Is it congratulations? By the way, like all we're doing is putting more pressure on. Congratulations,
James! The Win or Else Award. You Won it in decisive, fast fashion. Yeah, well, it's one of those things. Like mattering is good. Opportunity is good. You have to be good to be in this position. So whatever. Pressure is a privilege. Like of all the weird cliches out there, like I actually think that's a good one. It really is. It's just opportunity and then your ability to seize the moment. So, I mean, would he rather that Nick Singleton, Deni Dennis Sutton, and Drew Aller all left? It's like, no.
Right.
I'll take this. So we'll see what happens. All right. That's it for this version of Kings of the North. Back on Wednesday. Tuesday, Wednesday this week as we continue to maneuver and make sure we can do everything we need to do. Bring you two good Northern college football shows a week. And sometimes Northern college football show is swinging a sword and talking crap about the South. Oh, I didn't even say that. I touched my heart the other day. My younger daughter is still making like college decisions. We made a bunch of college visits in the past couple days. And she was talking about one of the schools that she was considering. And she said that school can cram it. And I was like, oh, it's just in the vernacular now. It's just like great. Sweeping the nation. It's like as it applies to, hey, how's your college decision making coming? Well, I have a school that can cram it, so I'm a proud father. So thanks as always to our producer, Mike Yorstowski, for making us look good and sound good. Great action in the chat here today, and it affected the show, which is like, we think that's fun. So if you can join us live on YouTube, we always welcome those people in there, and we certainly welcome the interaction. And if you watch it back later, that's awesome also. We'll see you on Wednesday. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was Kings of the North.